Alongside Rick Lee, our track handicapper and morning line maker, I'm Jim Byers. Welcome to another day of racing here at Lone Star Park and Lone Star Live. We're fast and firm once again. Rick, big weekend coming up. We've got a lot of things available on track here for $1 today. If you're joining us on track, programs, hot dogs, beer, popcorn, Pepsi, all $1. Big day tomorrow as well. There'll be a giveaway tomorrow, plus 11 good races tomorrow. Starting at 2:05, by the way, on Sunday for that Summer Turf Festival day. Hope the weather holds off. I think we might be okay tomorrow afternoon. We'll see. And then we wrap the week up with a Monday card at 2:35 Central. But let's get right on to the first. We agree on a lot of top picks early in the card, not so much later. First race, non-winners of 2, fillies and mares, 7.5 on the turf. A lot of what I would describe as long-time non-winners of 2 in this field.
Yeah, the 7, Sister Kitten, right now is a slight favorite on the board. Based on past form, obviously, raced real competitively in Kentucky last year, Kentucky Downs, Alice Park, Churchill Downs, all earning really good figures. Also earlier in his career under the tutelage of Chad Brown. So this 5-year-old mare's really had the top conditioners. Michael Maker in Kentucky was shipped to Jody Pruitt in Oklahoma after 7.5 months of rest. Caught a sloppy track up there, and I really feel like got absolutely no conditioning from that race. Shipped to Lone Star Park, put on her preferred surface, and finished third as the favorite on that particular day. The winner of that race, Siamese, did come back to win, and I just feel like she probably really needed that race. Jody Pruitt, since then, put a really strong work into this horse on the main track, 5/8 of a mile, and I just feel like, this mare deserves a slight edge here. The 5-horse, Leah's Princess, is my next selection. Took blinkers off on June 5th at this exact same condition and ran a terrific race. Made it to the front and really gave way grudgingly, beaten only a neck. Clear back to the third-place finisher. And then last time out off such a top performance and back in just 7 days, took on allowance rivals. So to me, that quick turnaround, moving up in class, it's easy to excuse that effort. Now back where she belongs. So she's going to be a very big contender in here. Then I thought the 3, Swanage, may have finally found a race where she can lead from start to finish. She has a couple recent second-place finishes, one from just off the front, and then the last 2 races, she's made the lead. This may not have to go as fast today on the lead, and switches to David Cabrera, which may also help.
I really kind of thought, and this may be the case, that she'd be overbet. She is definitely a wire-to-wire threat. I'm just not crazy about fillies that fade every time, even though they're getting this 7.5 distance where I don't mind being on the front end, because it just seems like the wire comes a little sooner in those races than I'm usually expecting, at least when calling the race. But I picked against Swanage. She usually flattens. She's not getting hammered too hard here in the early betting, considering she's been in pretty good form. I went with Sister Kitten as well. I thought she moved a little prematurely last time, and it may have been that, like you say, she didn't get much out of that comeback race, and she was kind of fresh and wanting to go on with it, and she might have just sort of pulled Valdez Jimenez up closer to the lead. But you can see from the running line, she was sitting off of it, and then she was kind of close to the pace, then she contested for the lead in the stretch and faded. But I think she should move up from that. It's worth noting, you mentioned Siamese came back and won her next race. Well, oddly enough, Malibu Midnight, who was second in that race, came back and ran second again to Siamese. They ran 2 straight races, June 20th, and then this spot May 29th, so there was a repeat factor there. I think her racing competitively with them is a pretty good sign. So I took her. And my third pick here is the 8, Great in Red, who's not being bet much early, a Broberg, Louisiana bred, who had a pretty good effort against Lee's Princess, and Daddy made me do it in that first race for Lee's Princess back on June 5th, before she came back a week later, and seemed reasonably competitive there, and broke her maiden at Louisiana Downs in mid-May, and another one of those wacky hand-timed races that they seem to have a lot of over there in Bossier City. But at least this time they actually came up with a time, it looks like. Or did they? Looks like they stopped at 6 furlongs. Did they have a final time in that race? Anyway, it was a race recently from LAD where they didn't even come up with a time at all, fraction or otherwise, but nonetheless. And I took Lee's Princess fourth. Just don't know what. I mean, she's back at a better level. Couldn't really like her that much, so I busted her a fourth.
Yeah, the buyer folks must have found a final time somewhere, because you're right, it doesn't show a final time, but there is a figure, and we're told we can't put in a figure if we don't know a time. So there's a final time out there. It's just interesting it's not in the PPs.
The last time I questioned a Bossier City lack of final time, I think it was that pick up the phone that won for fun here for Steve Asmussen, so I really should refrain from commenting on other tracks' timing issues. On to the second race, 3/4 of a mile. This race written for fillies and mares 3 and up, but they're all 3-year-old fillies in this spot. 3/4 of a mile, non-winners of 2.
Yeah, and trainer C.R. Trout, he hasn't entered many this year in 2021, but he's always been a high percentage stable, comes out of Oklahoma, and he does an exceptional job every year. This horse, broke his maiden by 18 lengths at Remington last fall. Was narrowly beaten in a strong optional claimer. Fast forward to an Oaklawn start off of a layoff, and showed good speed that day. Tired a little bit, but I picked the horse off his most recent race here at Lone Star Park, where he finished second. It was 2 lengths back to third. It's worth noting that the winner, Canadian Ginger, came back and was very impressive in his very next start. So back at the same level, fast and fine worker. You've got to believe he's going to improve. Yeah, he's very lightly raced this season, so if he improves, he's going to be tough to beat. The 5 in here, a real jewel, won a maiden special weight race at 7/8 of a mile for trainer Steve Asmussen. You can just see the steady improvement with this 3-year-old filly. Draws comfortably outside of, I would say, her primary opposition here. So, a really good chance there. And the 1, Shasta Lou for Diodoro. Been running 2 turns of late, but you can see at the end of the 6, 7/8 of a mile in those route races, been right there on the lead in most of those situations. Did sprint well at Turf Way Park, proving that, she can sprint. She was with Brad Cox, earlier in her career, but Diodoro, another high percentage outfit. Maybe the turn back in distance will be what this filly's really been wanting to do.
Yeah, Diodoro's got 2 in here that I would pay attention to. I went with Fast and Fine Worker as well. Not only Canadian Ginger, who's been, she's looked like Lady's Secret here in 2 or 3 starts. She goes to the front. Everybody chasing her can just throw in the towel. They're in their own race. Mm-hmm. And I thought she ran really well on May 22nd. And she seems to have, had a decent work pattern, at least a couple of decent breezes since. It's worth noting, too, that race, you mentioned that race at Oaklawn. That was a salty field. That Sylvia Q wound up being 7-2 in the fantasy, which it's hard for me to believe that's a grade 3 race. There's some stakes that have lost luster over the years, and I guess that's one of them. I remember when the fantasy was, a phenomenal race. It still is a grade 3. And she was well beaten in that as a long shot, but that was a really tough field. Mm-hmm. And I think getting back to this reality will help her. The filly that I'm curious about is Markup. She was a very poorly behaved filly at the gate. Would not load. Ran, tremendously well against La Muse, who I think is a promising, really well-bred Asmussen filly, and Aiden Ike, who I've been picking repeatedly without success. But I think that maiden race, I'm curious to see. I think that field was tougher than a real Jewels maiden breaking field. And I feel confident in saying that. It's not to say a real jewel can't be a big contender here, but I went 4, 6, 5. And Shasta Lou, I think it's interesting. Diodoro goes with, his more go-to rider on Markup than Shasta Lou. That's why I favored her over the 1. But good race there.
Yep.
Third race, 1 mile, non-winners of 2. We got a heavy favorite here on the morning line, and this horse, Right Tone, is a darling of the Buyer Figs. Seems to tower over them, and we both took him.
Yeah, he ran against really good company at Oaklawn Park, and some really strong maiden special weight races. Again, around 2 turns, strong figures there. Shipped to Lone Star Park, Diodoro decided to sprint and add blinkers. The horse, based on company line, was really heavily bet, and just crushed that field. Obviously, he's bred to be better around 2 turns. On paper, he looks faster around 2 turns. So off those big efforts, he deserves favoritism in here. There are some promising runners in here, though. The 5 Warlock Dock, I think, is interesting. I know they took blinkers off 2 starts back. He responded with a really narrow defeat at this level on turf, earning a strong buyer figure. You can see he loves to train on the main track. I mean, his workouts are really good. 46-1. You see 47s. This Danny Pitch trainee really enjoys training, and though you might say he might be a little bit better on turf than dirt, I'm not so sure yet. His last race on the main track, we saw Bear Oak, Bandit Swanson. That was a really difficult group. So I'm expecting a big effort from Warlock Dock. And let's go to Say It Ain't Sony. This was a tough call for me. A 7-length made special weight win, sprinting 6 1/2 furlongs. That was an eye-opener. Then caught a sloppy track, trying 2 turns last time out, and really didn't run a jump. Sometimes when a horse has a lot of speed, things don't go their way in the first furlong. They just, pack it up. If he breaks alertly today, maybe he'll pop that 81 buyer figure he did sprinting 6 1/2 furlongs. If that's the case, he's going to be tough to catch.
Yeah, there's no warrants and Mr. Wirelesses and right and justs in this field. But, that race really was odd because that was that day on Lone Star Million Day that we had that really long weather delay, about a 30 or 35-minute weather delay, and there was standing water on the track, and races had to be taken off the turf late, and this one wasn't. But the track conditions probably were not to his liking that day. I think he could revert to a better performance. He probably should today, but I've got him third as well. We've got the same picks in the same order. Warlock Dock is intriguing to me because you picked him at 20-1 as your long shot on July 21st of last year, and he got bumped quite late in the race. It was elevated to the win, and that's the only race that this horse has ever won. He's never actually crossed the wire first, but he's run some nice races. He's earned almost $50,000. He does appear to be good on both turf and dirt. I'm wondering if maybe they're running him here just because he's so sharp. Like, I would be inclined to think off that last turf race, maybe you hunt for a turf race for him, but maybe they think they can grab a quick non-winners of 2 win out of him here because he's so sharp. That's one thing that I'm thinking about there. On to the 4th. We've got a scratch here, number 2, Gambler. He was part of a speed scenario, I think, in this race. 1 1/8, which is an interesting distance on the turf here. I mean, we just don't run a lot of races beyond 1 1/16 on the turf. Starter optional claimer.
And I thought this was a pretty big scratch because I thought Antarctic now, stands an improved chance to win. I mean, he was already 5-2 on the line. I didn't pick him to win, but you can make a case, with the exit of Gambler out of this field that he might be able to make the early lead in here. All the 6-year-old gelding has done is won 3 consecutive races. One at Evangeline, he actually came from 4 lengths back in the early going and still was determined enough to win. Since then, he's been much closer to the pace, including his last win, defeating $20,000 claimers here at Lone Star Park. My top pick was Mujab Jr., or is, I should say. Just a picture of consistency, a 5-time winner, a 9-time total winner. You can see he's run big. He won a stake at Houston this winter. Since then, he won a really nice optional claimer for Open Company. This is an open race. He typically runs in state-bred stakes. Last time out, finishing second to state-bred Superstar Sunlit Song. So Mujab Jr., off consistency, strong figures. I mean, he's the one to beat. No cinch, though. Harvey Wallbanger, who has only run on turf 1 time, and that was a terrific performance, finishing second behind Sunlit Song. Since then, 2 off-track, main-track races, kind of, I think, muddied up his form a little bit. Now dropping into a straight claimer. He has not run in a claiming race since 2 back-to-back wins at Fairgrounds. So, again, when he's in for a tag, he's been very difficult to beat. And then I think, I already mentioned my 3rd pick. I spent a lot of time on Antarctic as the one to catch in here.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Antarctic is in great form, but he was claimed out of his last out. I don't know. He's going to beat me. I mean, to see him stretch his speed 9 furlongs. he could do it. The very first race I ever called here, thoroughbred race, was a 9-furlong race when I was filling in for John Lees at the end of 2015, and a 50-1 shot, I think, trained by Mindy Willis, ridden by Paul Nolan, led wire to wire, led every jump, and I don't think I've seen a wire-to-wire 9-furlong winner here since, but nonetheless, I went with Mujab Jr. as well. I just can't go against this guy. Harvey Wallbanger, I think he'll be happy to be back on turf. I thought his first turf race was really good, and then, of course, he catches the Steve Sexton Mile. Then he runs in that race with Popular Kid and Thomas Shelby. That was a pretty tough race, too. And and Fred's Twirlin' Candy was my third pick over Antarctic, because Fred's Twirlin' Candy usually gives a good account of himself on this turf. The fifth race today begins the six-shooter. We have a carryover of $49,377 in race 5. Texas bred non-winners of 3 fillies. Oh, and there's a scratch in here, a filly that is a bad gate actor and is just basically appears to be a bundle of nerves. The 5 twirling around. She is scratched.
Yeah, she was going to be the speed of the race, so that makes it a little more interesting. The entry, I did lay 3 to 5. How do you come up with 3 to 5? Well, if you think they're both around 2 to 1 shots, you end up making them 3 to 5. So they both, I think, have pretty much equal chance to win. Maybe that's a lot of bling. I think a slightly better chance in this spot. But they're both pretty consistent for horses that run at this bottom level. They're in from a high percentage barn and have 2 of our leading riders aboard. So I'd expect that's a lot of bling to be stalking or pressing the pace, and Texas Music Box to be the one that'll benefit if the pace heats up a little too much. I like Storm Traffic also. It's interesting he was stake placed here last year, but does she know it? I mean, she Brave Daisy, and I'm a discreet lady. I mean, she was 14 lengths back in a third. It still makes her stake placed, however. Unraced since November, but you can look at the company she's kept throughout her career. It's far superior to what she's seeing today. So if Donnell Durham, has her fit and ready to compete, she can clearly win this race. And the whiskey worked for Mindy Willis, who's been really hot of late. Picks up Louis Q here. She's been winning a lot with Stuart Elliott, as you've mentioned a few times, especially when Asmussen's got something in the race and Stuart's riding for Willis. I mean, it's an amazing streak this past week, at least.
Yeah, there have been a couple of really nice winners that didn't necessarily jump off the page at you on paper, but Elliott took a call from Mindy Willis. One ran second, one won yesterday. Asmussen had at least a horse, if not 2 horses, in the same race. And Elliott went with the Willis horse and ran well both times. One time at like 20 to 1 ran second. So just something to keep an eye on. I don't really have anything to add because there isn't much else in this race. And we're on the same horses. So let's move on to an interesting race here in race number 6. I marked Stan's Miracle Man in my virtual stable the minute he crossed the wire. I mean, as soon as we cleared the winner's circle on May 28th, I made a note to myself and a physical note, pick Stan's Miracle Man next time, no matter what.
What did you see in the trip that had you so convinced?
Well, he broke sluggishly. I mean, I think that's the way I would say it. Those 4.5 races, we get a pretty good look at the start because the gates we're almost looking at the back end of them. And they came out of there. He broke a bit sluggishly, and I like the way he finished. He and his entry mate that day were heavily favored, and they broke last and next to last. And I like the way he finished, and he was so clear of the third-place horse. I just thought, and I thought Timed Event ran a really nice race. I don't think we've heard from him since, at least I don't recall.
No.
But I just thought, he was even money and broke bad. He's going to be short price and probably win next time.
Yeah, Timed Event, he was part of a pretty moderate pace up the top, and Caldwell's really good with first-time starters and babies. So yeah, Timed Event at 7 to 1 did cruise to the lead, but I agree with you. Stan's Miracle Man to me ran a winning race that day. So I had to take him back as well. Lynx Boy, Danny Pish, he's really good with lightly raced 2-year-olds. First time out, finished third. It's worth mentioning Royal Tap was 3 to 5 the winner of that race, and this one just missed second place by a head, even though we had a little bit of traffic trouble down on the inside. Second-time starter for Pishoff, such an encouraging debut, a logical horse. And the 7, Body Moore Heath, who, finished fourth in his debut, but there were only 4 ahead in the race. That's the downside. But he did take on stakes rivals. We talked about him in his debut because he had trained pretty nicely. And Gustafson had just taken over the training of this horse, as I recall. So, Austin, I was talking to someone I know, and he just said, well, I only had the horse a few days, so he'll run better next time. And I think he will. He got beat 18.5 lengths, so I'm going to go out on a limb and say he will run better.
He also got, I wrote on my little notes, and everybody sees races differently, but I think it's a complete toss-out because I don't think he had any chance after the start in that particular race. Tango Mis Papeles, that was a really tough spot for this horse to make a debut because you got to figure this horse was pretty highly regarded back in May, and he was scratched. He was a vet scratch Memorial Day weekend, and he was going to be highly regarded that day. And then he came back and was still 9-2 in that Tango Mis Papeles race. And it was only 4 horses, but I think that was a pretty tough spot for his debut. And he compromised his chances, I thought, tremendously at the start. Now, he didn't pick it up much afterward, whereas Stan's Miracle Man, I think, had a really nice performance that maybe is even better than it looks on paper. So I went with Bodymore Heath third as well. I'm intrigued by Asmussen's horse in here. I used him fourth, Ready to Shake. Puts blinkers on, was in that same race with Stan's Miracle Man and timed event, was laying a little closer to the pace, got a better start than Stan's Miracle Man, didn't finish up very well. I'm just curious to see how he runs in there. But still, Stan's Miracle Man's a justifiably short price, I think, in there.
And while we're talking about 2-year-old fillies, I'll just quickly say the most impressive 2-year-old filly winner of the meet, Wicked Halo, is running in the debutante today. So those of you that follow our racing at Lone Star Park and wondered, where's Wicked Halo after such an impressive debut win, she's running today at Churchill in the debutante.
Well, we'll see. We'll be looking forward to seeing how she performs there. Let's move on to the 7th. Scratch the 7, Amazing Wisdom, and the 8, Easily Unbridled. So we lose an Arkansas bred and kind of a speed type out of this mile and a 16th turf affair.
Yeah, and recently the 6 Days of Glory's best races have been coming on turf. You can see against Better and non-winners of 4. This is non-winners of 3. Was very competitive, earned a strong figure, and also an allowance race finishing third. So Days of Glory's best turf races to me are good enough. Diodoro's only had him for 1 start, so I expect him to bounce back and really finish strong today. Perfect Star is my next selection. If you bet him in his last 2 starts, I mean, that's tough breaks. He's had what looked like safe leads, and in the final strides, he's been caught twice. The last time by Coliquist, who is a heavy favorite, so no disgrace there. Perhaps the day, dropping back into a condition-claiming race, the company, will suit him really well. Cola last time out was a determined winner. You got to, say that about him. That was a non-winners of 2. Now jumps up into a non-winners of 3. Was 17-1, so the time to play him was last time, but he's certainly a repeat candidate. And he did race well against some pretty good Oklahoma-bred allowance rivals last winter, proving his last start really wasn't a fluke.
No, and Kerry Craddock's very good at keeping a horse sharp. You see that percentage with 1 last start, almost 25%. And so I think Cola, I've got him third as well. I think he could fire right back. I went with Perfect Star. He's the first-time gelding, by the way. We're notified that he's running for the first time since being gelded. With Easily Unbridled out of there, I actually like my pick of Perfect Star more than I did when I made the pick initially, just because I think he might be able to find a reasonably comfortable lead. Now, like you say, that hasn't necessarily paid off the last couple, but that 2 races back, he was going 9 furlongs and on a course that isn't as speed favoring as this one. So I went with him over Days of Glory. Days of Glory could set a really nice trip. And so I didn't go back to the well with Slutang Clan, who I had at 10-1 on the main track last time. I used him fourth today. I couldn't quite go back to the well with the.
Yeah, that was one of your great picks of the meet.
Well, yeah, and since then, I'm still living off that glory, you might say, since that nice pick a couple weeks back. I'm really intrigued by this 8th race. 5.5 furlongs, Texas bred, Scratch the 2, Texas Whirlwind, and the 7 Bebop Baby, who was your original pick. I was going to try to beat her with My Baby Blue, who's one of the most impressive maiden winners we've had all meet. Certainly one not trained by Steve Asmussen. But we scratched Bebop Baby, and now, we got a real speedy type in My Golden Bling, who's probably going to be tough to catch.
Yeah, that's who I've picked here. My Golden Bling for Austin Gustafson. We've mentioned before, I know he comes off a non-winners at 3T bred, but a lot of times that entry-level allowance for Texas breds, you don't see much of a difference in it. This is a race where buyer figures aren't going to help you. All these horses are probably projected to run about the par of 62. This filly for Gustafson wins every other race. That's kind of an interesting pattern. That certainly doesn't mean she'll get beat today and win in 3 weeks, but that's been the pattern. I think she'll make a clear lead once again in here today, and since the distance is 5.5 furlongs, I'm going to give her, a slight edge in here. My Baby Blue, horses that win impressively in their debuts, a rule of thumb, you try not to pick a lot of them because they usually look a little more dressed up than you really want them to. But that was an impressive race. This is not a very strong entry-level allowance field. And the runner-up came back yesterday, Crescendo Bling, out of her maiden win to win again, or to win back. So, plenty to like there. And the 3, Lady Fly Like a Jet, who's been pretty consistent this year, has a win and a runner-up finish in condition claiming races, was claimed by Ronnie Cravens, who actually had her earlier in her career, and she tried this level last time out, bet down to 9-5, and ran a solid race. She was close to the pace, finishing 4th. Comes back today on a track that's fast. That one had a little bit too much moisture in it, perhaps, for her.
Yeah, I think so. I went ahead and took My Baby Blue. I know it's the impressive maiden win. I mean, I totally agree with that. And normally, I wouldn't jump. I'm not one that loves to jump on horses coming out of maiden wins, taking on horses that have experience facing non-maidens. But I make an exception here. I think it's interesting that she was working like any type of horse prior to her debut. I mean, she was working like Baffert-type works, 59-4 and whatnot. And they had the bug boy, Jose Vasquez on her. She wins at 8-5, got a rail skimming trip. And I thought Vasquez rode her well, but now they put a veteran rider in Luis Quinones on her. They've worked her since. I really like that aspect. I don't think she beat a whole lot, although Crescendo Bling's win yesterday was emphatic. I'm just going to give her a shot again. My Golden Bling is certainly dangerous. And, with Bebop Baby out of there, I think the prices on both of them are probably going to be kind of deflated now. I took Whipham Nene 3rd. I mean, I've had a history of picking against her, but for some reason, I thought her last race was pretty darn good, quite honestly, on turf. Now she gets back to the main track. I took her over Lady Fly Like Jet. But
well, you've picked a couple times this meet, I believe. Lady Fly Like Jet, and I've had Lady Ave in their big matchups we've seen this year.
Yeah, I think I got soured on Lady Fly Like Jet from having picked her several times. On to the 9th. Texas bred, 2 other than allowance, Scratch the 7 Cross Time, and the 10 Affluent Gentleman.
Yeah, the 5 He's a Suitor, certainly first race for Broberg, ran a really outstanding race, went into 1 other than. That was on turf, however, but his previous races on the main track were also very good. He switches back to Aramia. If you look down there, Richards had a lot of success with He's a Suitor in the past. Obviously, he's very versatile, this horse. Turf, dirt, sprint, route. It doesn't seem to matter too much. So, I'm taking He's a Suitor. Again, from a betting perspective, if the price gets too short, like 6-5, I'd probably go elsewhere. The 9 Gold Pilot. This is a very strong finisher. I mean, that's the strength of this 4-year-old. You can see he took on stake rivals all of last year and won a couple of those races. Earlier this year, once again, in stake competition, finished 2nd in the Spirit of Texas down at Houston in March. Last time out, 5th by 10, not his best performance, but that was in open company. So now he's back in with his friends, his fellow Texas breds, and he's always difficult to turn back in state bred at a state bred level. let's say the 8 Irish Expectations is next. Started off kind of inexpensive. Went in a non-winners of 2 for 10 here by 8 lengths. Went up to a non-3 in his first start for Matt Hebert. Once again, shows a lot of determination to win. They go up and do a state-bred entry-level allowance field. This time he gets beat to the front, and it didn't matter at all. He still ends up drawing off to win late. This horse is really good right now. And I could see him winning for the 4th straight time.
Yeah, I've really been on his bandwagon, but to me this spot's a little too tough with the Brett Calhoun's here. So I took him 3rd. Gold Pilot and He's a Suitor were stablemates for a long time, and quite frankly, they were kind of similar. They ran in some of the same company. They were mainly Texas-bred stakes types. They ran against each other as recently as March 20th in the Spirit of Texas. And in that race, Gold Pilot was 9-2, and He's a Suitor was 6-1, and Gold Pilot outran him. I went with Gold Pilot in here. I just think, the Calhoun barn dropped He's a Suitor. They lost him for 10,000. They've never dropped Gold Pilot in for a tag. I think these are very similar horses. And let's face it, I picked against He's a Suitor last time, and Ari Celestic Man ran a really nice race, but He's a Suitor looked like a cinch and won like a cinch last time. Now, it was on turf, and he's run well on the main track, but I just think sprinting, I kind of prefer Gold Pilot a little bit here, and so I lean toward him. A lot to like about He's a Suitor as well. It's been a while since Gold Pilot won a race. I mean, you got to go back to February 22nd of 2020. So, think how much things have changed since February of 2020. Yeah. But nonetheless, I think he's gotten pretty good with blinkers. Oh, we'll take a shot.
Yeah, that's
He's a Suitor
tough
might beat
race.
me again.
Well, He's a Suitor will be in front of him, turning for home, which, again, when I have 2 horses, that's always my tiebreaker.
And when you've had when we've differed on picks lately, you've tended to be in front of me for a while. But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Every day is different. 10th race. 5 ace on the turf, scratch the 1 Miss High Heels, part of an entry. Scratch the 8 Gracely, who I was trying to beat in this spot. Scratch the 2B Mainline. We might see her in a couple of days. Scratch the 10 Princess of Chi-Town.
Yeah, and I almost asked your permission if I could pick Shield Park, since that was maybe your greatest pick of the meet. At 10-1, horse coming up from Turf Paradise, where he was 3-5 running against a bunch of nothings, but Jim sifted through it.
But did it impressively. And we showed her in video, too. She was one of the early video connect horses.
I know. I'm disgusted by that race, even now. But
and then you picked her the next time, and she ran second to Ignis.
That's how foolish I've been. But Ignis came back to win an allowance race after beating Shield Park narrowly. So Shield Park's 2 turf sprints actually are very good, and she's very quick. So, I'm going to take Shield Park this time and see if I can, get the money. The 3 Special Treasure, you got to love her versatility. I mean, when the pace is slow, she's on the lead, or not even slow. I mean, she shows good speed. When she didn't break very well back in April at Houston, she finished strong to be 4th best. Only 1 for 19, but her turf record's, pretty consistent. So, I like her chances. And Pika, the 6, has hit the board twice recently. Another that's 1 for 16. But again, if you just isolate her turf sprints at Lone Star Park, you see a maiden special weight win last year, and you see a strong second place finish, again, behind Ignis last time out. So Pika is in great form right now, and she's going to come running.
Yeah. Ignis is really good. I mean, I don't downgrade Shield Park. I picked Shield Park both times she's run here, and Ignis is going to be. I've got her picked again tomorrow in one of the turf stakes, the sprint stake. So yeah, Pika's last race was really impressive. I went with Shield Park as well. I think this time they just have to let her rip. I think they kind of got a little cagey last time, possibly, and let Ignis get up in there and compete with her, and Ignis outgamed her. I just hope they just let her rip and let her flash that kind of speed she showed on May 9th. Not that they weren't trying to do that before, but I'm just hoping she goes flying there. Don't Float the Ice is my second pick here. I just think just in case Shield Park doesn't get away well or gets bumped or whatever. I kind of want another speed type, although Special Treasure, like you say, has just about as good a speed as anybody, probably better. But I took Don't Float the Ice second over Pika and then Special Treasure. I was kind of overlooking Special Treasure, and then this morning after the scratches, I thought, well, I really shouldn't overlook her. But
yeah, there's plenty of speed, but that's typical for this distance.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to come up with an excuse for Pika today. I mean, you'd think the stars are aligned, and Mindy Willis is hot. So,
Yeah,
a
she
lot
is.
to like with Pika today.
Luis Quinones should get her to settle and rally quite
Yep.
nicely. All right. Well, we're a minute or two late. Rick, as always, thanks.
Thank you.
We'll be back again to do this tomorrow in this space for the 11-race Turf Festival card. Meanwhile, enjoy your Saturday, and thanks for looking in.